Infantry Weapons Postcards 34, East German 5.56mm and STG-940 Wieger series. One of the most prolific AK exporters in the Warsaw Pact, the East Germans also developed a line of 5.56 by 45mm rifles for export known as the Wieger. But that's not where the story begins, or ends. The STG-985 was an early experiment with a 5.56mm rifle and predated the Wieger program by a couple years. It was done with an eye for export, as well as to possibly arm various East German clandestine groups that could use a rifle in NATO caliber. The barrel, top cover, magazine, and basic operating system were actually directly taken from an Israeli Galil SAR. The two-piece handguard is made from wood and simply painted to match East German plastic. Only one example was made. Shortly after, in 1985, East Germany began the research and design of a 5.56 AK weapon system for export in a project done at the request of the Department of Foreign Trade, COCO. The first research examples followed shortly afterward, but they were not very different in appearance from a standard MPI-KM series rifle. Further design changes were done. Some of it was done for political reasons, so that the new rifle would be considered a new design and not subject to restrictive licensing agreements with the USSR. STG-940 Wieger was the name given to the weapons family. STG standing for Sturmgewehr, or assault rifle. The 940 comes from the factory model number series, and Wieger is a conglomeration of Visa and Germany. The fixed stock rifle was called the STG-941. The folding stock rifle was the STG-942. The short-barreled variant, the STG-943. The long-barreled light machine gun was called the LMG-944, and the sharp shooting rifle was called the SSG-945. The later three variants, only a handful, were made as samples. Like all East German AKs, final design, many of the main parts, and final assembly was done at VB Gerede- und Werkzeugbau Visa. The Fahrzeug- und Jagdwaffenwerk Ernst Thälmann Weapons Factory in Suhl made many of the other major parts, such as the barrel, while many of the other parts were made by over a dozen different subcontractors. The finalized design emerged in 1988, with testing being done that September by the East German Army in Brandenburg. The three models tested were the STG 941, 942, and 943. Results were positive, and it was offered to customers shortly afterward. The first two nations interested were Peru and India. Many samples were sent for their own troop trials, where the rifles reportedly performed better than their Western 5.56 competitors. Contracts were also secured with Uganda, Ghana, and Nigeria, with a targeted production of 30,000 rifles per year by 1991. As a result of feedback from testing, minor changes were made to the weapon system before full production was to begin in August 1989. This encompassed changes to the pistol grip cleaning kit compartment, cooling slots in the handguards, as well as the addition of a bayonet lug, and changes to the flash hider. The flash hider was threaded internally for the blank adapter. By then, many political changes were happening in East Germany, and the majority of the rifles were not delivered before production of the Wieger, and all East German AKs ended in August 1990. Total production numbers of the Wieger numbered between 6 and 10,000 pieces, with almost all of them being the STG 941 and 942. Only a few of the STG 943s were made overall. While offered for sale, it was never ordered. The new unified German government canceled all the contracts and was forced to pay as a result. Most of the rifles that were produced were destroyed. The plans and all the design documentation was secretly whisked away into German archives in Koblenz before being destroyed in 2003. Today, the German Bundeswehr continues to use small numbers of the STG 940 and 941 as a training weapon. While the East Germans spent millions of East German marks to create the Wieger system, at the end of the day, it was still a standard Kalashnikov internally. Notice that it used an AK-74 pattern narrow stem bolt. It also used an AK-74 style feed ramp. While the 5.56mm STG-940 was the most well-known and produced, Wisa also produced the Wieger weapons family and other calibers, the 5.45 STG-950 series, and the 7.62x39 STG-970 series were done as one-off samples in 1989, predating the Russian AK-100 series and Bulgarian AR series by several years. The East German military was firmly committed to the MPI AK-74N family, and the LMG 500 was due to begin production soon, so there were not any plans to build the Wieger for domestic use. In more recent years, the Cougar mechanical plant in Romania has shown samples of their own near-identical copy in the Romanian search for a 5.56mm NATO rifle. Civilian models were even sold in the United States, where it even created a mini scandal in the German press, as one of the selling points was that the rifle was a Wieger. Now please consider subscribing, or I will send East German weapon designers to redesign your family.